Hey everyone, it's Kong again with another episode of Should You Summon. As always, I'm going to be presenting high-level overviews using these 4 criteria to help you decide whether this banner is worth your hard-earned vouchers and crystals. This week we've got a Yeless Legends Destiny banner featuring the Sage of the Trees, Wiler, and Mew. This banner runs from February 10th to the 23rd. As a Destiny banner, the first SSR you pull is guaranteed to be one of these 3 on-banner heroes that you don't already have. After you do pop that first SSR and get your guaranteed unit, or if you do already have all 3 featured heroes, then this banner is just treated as a normal rate up with a 20% off banner rate. So the first character on the banner is the Sage of the Trees. Sage of the Trees is a magical support unit. When he dies, he dispels all debuffs for allies within a pretty decent radius, and he hits tiles within this area with his signature terrain effect. This effect causes enemies with flying or cavalry type movement to have to burn extra mobility to move onto the tiles, and his terrain also gives infantry or aquatic allies who move onto the tiles a Spirit Boots-like opportunity to move again after combat. So this is a nice way to be able to get in and poke at enemies and then be able to retreat a little bit afterwards. His 3-cost skill is a big 3-line AoE attack that pushes enemies back and applies his terrain effect. It also has a passive component that reduces incoming crit rate and range damage and boosts healing effects. He also has access to a 1-cost self-revive passive skill. His unique helmet increases his unit attack range by 1 and casts his terrain effect on the tile the target is standing on and the adjacent tiles. Combined with the fact that he doesn't suffer melee damage penalties, which is a part of his talent, he's perfectly capable of chipping in with some random DPS here and there. He's a member of Yeless Legends, buffed by Langrisser and Sigma, and Mythical Realm, buffed by Gizoroth and the Sage of the Trees. His faction buff for Mythical Realm increases range damage dealt by 12%, and removes a debuff if you end your turn without dealing damage. For bonds, he unlocks the attack bond for Mariendel, and for his own bonds he needs the Knight of Mystery for his defensive bond and Listel for his attack bond. For content, in PvE, he's on faction for Phoenix in the Eternal Temple, and Fenrir and Needhog in Ancient Beckoning. In PvP, he's still a decent pick for Apex Arena in the right team. He used to be a staple in Mythical Realm-based AoE teams or anti-rush teams because of his faction buff and terrain, but now he more commonly shows up in teams that ban Hilda to use displacement skills on other tanks. Next up we've got Wiler. Wiler is a support-based healer. His talent increases support skill range and soldier stats, and when he dies it removes 2 debuffs from affected allies and grants pre-battle healing for up to 3 turns. His 3-cost skill activates those talent effects without needing him to die, and it also boosts damage dealt and reduces damage taken. So you can pop it when a battle's starting to get heated, and your allies will almost always enter combat in good health. He also has Dispel, Mass Heal, a conditional teleport skill, and a conditional Act Again, so that's quite a few tools to suit various specific situations. He's a member of Yeless Legends, buffed by Langrisser and Sigma, and Strategic Masters, buffed by Altemuller and Lanford. For bonds, he unlocks the defensive bond for SR tank Serena, and for his own bonds he needs Serena for his defensive bond and Lanford for his attack bond. For content, in PvE, he's on faction for Phoenix in the Eternal Temple, and a couple of the Ancient Beckoning fights, but his most practical PvE application is really just to give some recurring healing to a unit in run-of-the-mill content, so Time Rifts, Story for example. He used to be a top healer in PvP, but he's far less common and important there now. It's just too hard to compete with the other top-tier options. Being able to dispel, mass attack, heal, and act again a unit without soldiers, and mass eject your injured allies out of danger does give you a lot of tactical options, so if his kit suits your specific gameplay style, then he can definitely still work, you just have to know what you're doing. Finally, we have Mew. Yep, Mew. Gizoroth is a big science nerd, he has a lab and everything. Anyway, Mew's talent is an aura that increases allies' attack and int and heals them, but unlike typical auras that affect allies within a certain range of the user, this affects any allies standing on forest or grassland tiles, anywhere on the map. and if enemies end their turns on forest or grassland, they get a random debuff. Her 3-cost skill is a single target attack that inflicts a debuff for a couple of turns, and if the afflicted enemy is killed while this debuff is active, they turn into a terrifying mindless tree zombie that you can control. She also has a teleport that beams an ally to any forest or grassland tile on the map, and a passive that gives her additional skill range if she's on a forest or grassland tile. She's a member of Yeless Legends, buffed by Landius and Sigma, and Mythical Realm, buffed by Gizzeroth and the Sage of the Trees. For bonds, she doesn't unlock anyone else's bonds yet. She needs Gizzeroth for her defensive bond and Lambda for her attack bond. For content, in PvE, she's on faction for Phoenix and a couple of the Ancient Beckoning fights, but I don't think she's going to make a big impact on the big PvE bosses. Her teleport could be handy for treasure hunting though in normal maps. She can definitely be good in PvP though. She might be a more niche pick, but people who choose to build her could use her either as an AoE debuffer, or a side healer, or as an accelerator making use of her green teleport. Being able to land a unit almost anywhere on the map is pretty terrifying. Alright, so here's the quick and dirty. We've got the Sage of the Trees, who's a magical stalling and support unit with terrain effects. He unlocks the attack bond for Mariendal, and he carries a faction buff for Mythical Realm. We have Wiler, who's a dynamic supportive healer who unlocks the defensive bond for Serena. And we have Mew, who's a supportive magical unit with conditional map-wide auras and effects, and a conditional map-wide teleport. So it's time for the notes for noobs. Sage of the Trees is situationally useful depending on what you do with your game. If you want to play a Mythical Realm team, then he's pretty much essential as their buffer. He's well-rounded and helpful, but you can get by without him at this point. Wiler is a good healer, but there are a lot of those now. With no other overly compelling reason to pick him up, he's a pretty safe skip. Mew is more of a niche pick. Her aura and her teleport can be really clutch in the right team, but it can be hard to fit her into a solid Apex box. There's just so much competition for slots. Still, if you're designing your whole game around a certain strategy and she fits that strategy, then she can be interesting for sure. Finally, just my usual reminder about upcoming banners. Next week we should have a couple of the repeat offender Destiny banners featuring Bozel, Liana, and Luna, and Vincent, Zerida, and Claret. If you're a noob and you have limited resources, that first one is probably a safer summon than this one. It's just very generally useful heroes. Next month's major update should see the launch of Emperor Lavina, who's the new faction buffer for protagonists, and the Saint of the Ark. Alright, that's it for this episode, so thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next Should You Summon. Extra special thanks, of course, to all of our Langrisser tier channel members for generously supporting the channel directly. Levitt, Derek Gunderson, William Householder, Kate Soon, Jared Portela, Eden Seal, Titan Bradicus, Jerome Meyer, and Shara Ilinarius. Thank you very much.